Welcome back to another video, guys. In this one we're going to take a look at my standard hiking camp kit. So thank you for joining me here, guys. Once again, we're back out on a very wet, rainy, tropical storm day. Right off the bat, I want to apologise for any unnecessary sound in this video. We've got a factory and a road giving us quite a lot of noise, and there is a thunder going about, so the audio might not be perfect on this one, but we're going to keep going anyway. So, as I say, what we're going to be having a look at today is this rucksack here and the kit that I've got in it. And what I've got this loaded with is kind of my standard go-to minimum basic kit for a hiking style camp. So as in travelling distance, setting up, eating dehydrated food, things like that. It's not a bushcraft setup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything out the pack and lay it out. We'll talk through the items and we'll pack them into the rucksack so I can actually show you, because I want to show you in this video how I pack a rucksack as well as what I pack for this kind of thing. So yeah, I'll lay everything out and I'll come back to you. So there we are, I've laid out the kit. Now, as you can tell, there isn't a lot here. It's quite minimal, and if you compare this to something like even my bushcraft backpack, there's not a lot in here, and really that's because when we're hiking, which is again what this is aimed at, this is like an expedition hikey kind of thing. If I was doing a hiking trip, we need to keep weight down in our kit. Now, this isn't a particularly light setup. This comes in at around about 14.5 kilo, which is quite a lot, some people might say, in terms of a hiking kit, especially when we look at people that are doing sub 10 kilos and all of that nowadays. For me, 14 kilo is perfectly fine. I'm perfectly happy to carry that. One point quickly to make: that weight and what I've got here does not include food. I have not done food for this. So this is, there's water but there's no food. But we're coming in at about 14 kilograms, 14.5 kilograms. So you're probably looking close to 16, 17 kilos with food. But for me, that's actually fine. So we'll run through the items and then we'll look at packing them and why I pack them and how I pack them in the way that I do. So starting off, the rucksack that I use for every camp, basically, whether it's a bushcrafty style camp or it's a hiking trip or it's a single overnight scout camp, is this one here. This is the Osprey Archeon 45 litre rucksack. Now, the Archeon series from Osprey is somewhat of basically a bushcraft orientated setup. It's fully recyclable materials. It's more of a canvasy material than their traditional lightweight ones. One thing to point out in that instance is that this is quite a heavy rucksack in of itself. I think it weighs about 2 kilograms, but it is actually, I find, really comfortable. I find that the hip belt sits really nicely on my hips and takes that weight really nicely and well, so I'm happy to carry it. Well, the pack's fairly simple. You've got a brain, top loading rucksack. If you want a bit of details on the rucksack, obviously I will leave links in the description to all of the gear here, but also check out this video in the top right hand corner of your screen and in the description to a different kit loadout for this same rucksack, and I go into a bit of detail on the bag in that one, so check that out. But that's the rucksack. 45 litres is plenty sufficient for a weekend style camp, and that's kind of what this setup is aimed at, is maybe 4 or 5 days at most. The rucksack gets lined with this 80 litre dry bag from Mountain Warehouse. It's quite a heavy duty one, and to be honest I would kind of like to replace this with one of the similar companies like Osprey's pack liners that are made more slightly thinner, because this is quite weighty and quite thick and quite awkward in the pack sometimes, but it's the only one I've got that's big enough. In case you're wondering, because some of you might be new to this kind of thing, why am I lining the rucksack? Well, rucksacks are waterproof, and on a day like today, especially when we've got thunderstorms, we want to keep our kit dry. So there is a cheap alternative to this, which we recommend for the Scouts, which is packing or lining your rucksack with a black bin, with a couple of black bin liners. Generally, one's not enough. I would recommend you do 2 black bin liners on the inside of the pack. I've got another dry bag here, but I'll come back to that one. And a number of these items are in dry bags or packs of types of their own. I don't like just having hundreds of loose bits of kit in my rucksack. I try to keep it organized. And similarly, on the outside of the rucksack, I don't have basically anything swinging and things like that. There's only one item that's actually strapped to the outside, and we'll come back to that and I'll show you why in the way I do it, it is fine. The only thing that's on the outside of the pack that I forgot to mention is my pacing beads there. So working across the kit here, we've got a sleeping bag. Sleeping bags, obviously bog standard piece of kit for camping, but you need to make sure that whatever your bag is suitable for the conditions. I basically all year round use this Vango Latitude 200, Latitude Pro 200, sorry, 3-season bag. I'm based in the northeast of Scotland here, and even in the winter, I think the coldest we got this year was about -6. I wasn't camping in it, but it got to that, and to be honest, this bag would be fine if I paired it up with some things. Check, when you're buying a sleeping bag, check the ratings, and the one that you want to look at is the comfort rating. So sleeping bags and other sleeping items have different ratings. Now, bear in mind that they're not all the most accurate, but for example, this one here has a comfort of 2 degrees, -3 limit, and an extreme of, is actually worn off what the extreme is. I think it was about -10 or something. Ignore the extreme temperature, and to be honest, you could probably ignore the limit and just go for the comfort one. The comfort one is what you'll get away with, is if you sleep normally in it down to that temperature, you'll be fine. The limit, and the way I kind of look at it, is that the limit is you're going to have to supplement with items of clothing and things like that. But of course, our sleep system is made up of multiple parts, so we also have we need something underneath us. So I use a combination of 2 items. In this red dry bag here, I've got the OEX Traverse 3/4 length sleeping pad. It's a self-inflating pad, but I tend to blow it up anyway. It's got a decent bit of insulation to it. Now, I've only got the 3/4 length version. You can get the full length version, but it's much bigger in terms of physical size. So what I do is I pair up 2 different sleeping bags, 2 different sleeping pads. So I pair that with one of these simple basic foam mats. This is quite a thin one, but that's good because it packs down nice and small. You've got that reflective side. These are obviously the kind of go-to for most Scouts and, you know, things like that, D&V and all of those kinds of things. But I find that they're not overly comfortable. I used to use them by themselves, and anyone that does use them will know that they're not overly comfortable. So the pair of this gives me actually really quite good insulation, because these foam mats have, obviously it's not a set R value, but they do have a fairly decent R value to them in terms of their warmth rating. So the combination of these 2, basically I would be comfortable using this sleeping system in anything, providing I've got some other things like extra warm layers and things that I can supplement with. Realistically, I would happily go down to about -10 in this setup, and some people are going to go, that's not doable safely, or that's not really a good piece of advice, or whatever you want to say. For me, if I've got enough warm layers and I'm sensible with what I'm doing, I could probably get away with -10 with this this setup. That might include a sleeping bag liner, for example. Now, some other items here. You've got a tent. Tents are tricky, and tricky to pack, especially unless you've got one of the high-end, lightweight, really small tents. Now, my go-to tent is still the OEX Raccoon 2.1. Quite frankly, I swear by any of the OEX tents, basically. If I'm given one of them, I'll be quite happy. We use the Coyote 3s with the Scouts, have for years. We've still got the ones that we originally got, which are close to potentially 6 to 8 years old now, and they're still going fairly strong with just minor repairs. So again, now I used to separate the inner and the outer of this because they come in separate dry bags in this bag, but I've kind of changed up how I pack for this kind of thing, and it's now there. But what I have done is taken the poles out, because the poles are the tricky bit, because they're rigid and they're a set length, and especially for the Raccoon they're quite long, and the way that I was packing this, it doesn't work with these in the tent bag. Small bag of clothes. A lot of people overpack rucksacks, and see it in the Scouts all the time. And probably the biggest thing that I see overpacked and people packing far too much is clothes. I've seen us going for a single overnight camp and people bringing their whole wardrobe with them, kind of thing. You really don't need it. So all I've got in this little stuff sack bag here is a thermal top and bottom. Now you might say it's June, Adam, and it's 20 something degrees. Well, it's probably a bit colder than 20 degrees today, but you know, it's in the 20s most of the time at the minute with this heat wave we've got here in the UK. Why are you carrying thermals? That's my sleepwear when I'm camping. If I choose to change, which I don't always, sometimes I will just camp or sleep in the clothes I'm wearing. But if I choose to change, that's my preferred method, is a long sleeve top and bottom, thermal trousers and top, and that works fine. And then I've also got a change of underwear and a single pair of socks. Now I've got a thin pair of socks in here for sleeping in particular. If I was going to be doing a weekend, I'd actually probably have a second pair of thick, darn tough merino wool socks as a backup for hiking in, as well as the pair for sleeping in. But I didn't pack any today, and that's it. And even for a kind of weekend trip, realistically, 2 or 3 pairs of underwear, including the ones you're wearing, is more than enough. Hidden in here, just got a little pillow. A lot of people don't use a pillow. I do use a pillow if I can. It's just the Trekology, a Luft pillow here. It just, you know, like, we're not military soldiers that are just using bog standard kit. We can take what we want to make our lives comfortable. We don't have to. This idea that camping on the trail is misery doesn't need to be the case. I talked about warm layers, so in supplement, I guess, to that spare clothes that I've got 2 kind of loose garments packed into my rucksack. Number one is just a simple down jacket. Even in the summer here, I am carrying a down jacket, because when you get into camp, especially if you've been sweating and working hard all day and the sun goes down and you cool down because you've stopped and you're sitting about, you do get cold. And I actually find that no matter how many fleeces or whatever I put on, I can tend to still be cold. So this one down jacket on and life is good. It just is cozy. And again, down jackets being that down, packed down, packed down really tiny. So, and weighs absolutely nothing. And that kind of gets packed out of the way, but then you'll see where I pack it. But then I also carry a fleece. So at this time of year, this thin rab fleece is more than enough. I might well be wearing this if it's a cooler day. I might well be wearing this, as I say, but if I'm not, it's going to be in the pack. In the winter, if it's cold, but it's like, you know, winter conditions but not cold conditions, I might have this on all the time and have a slightly thicker like my Northridge fleece or something like that in the pack. But again, this is variable. Water is obviously super important, and it is the thing that keeps us alive. So for this setup hiking kit, I'm just carrying one litre water bottle. This is the ocean bottle. This is actually both my main outdoor bottle now, and it's also just my daily driver, and it's warm today, so we're going to take a drink. So this is an insulated water bottle. It's not vacuum sealed, but it is an insulated water bottle. So I like an insulated water bottle, actually. A lot of people, you know, I keep getting tempted by things like the Nalgene's and things like that, and they are brilliant bottles, but for me, having a cold drink on a warm day is actually really helpful. But also being able to put a hot cup of tea or whatever, something like that, tea or coffee, into that in the winter, whilst you're hiking, you're still getting your liquid, especially if it's something like tea or coffee. You know, it's mostly water, it's, you know, it's flavoured water at the end of the day. Having a hot drink is just as helpful. Now, 1 litre isn't a particular lot, especially in the summer, but this kit set up in this way is kind of relying upon the route of the trip being something like the Speyside Way, where you're following a river the whole time. And that's why, to go along with it, I've got my Katadyn Be-Free 0.6 litre water filter here. I absolutely love this filter. A lot of people have concerns about the bags popping on these, and it was something that I had a concern about. I've been using that, I don't know, maybe a year now, I don't even know. I've yet to have a problem with it, and it's super easy to clean out as well. Flow rate's good, but there is lots of options on the market in terms of water filters. So, as I've said, it's raining, and obviously at the start of this video I had my jacket on, so being prepared for all the conditions, no matter when you're out, even in the summer. I'm carrying a waterproof jacket, so I believe this is a Pertex Shield. This is the Rab jacket here. Thin waterproof, does a brilliant job. And then along with that, I've got, which you've seen plenty of times, my weather kit, which is just a thin pair of gloves, a thin beanie, hat, some buffs, and my waterproof trousers. Again, in the summer, a lot of this stuff's quite unlikely to get pulled out, especially waterproof trousers, because even if it is a day like today where it's absolutely tipping it down every now and then, it's as warm that you kind of put the trousers on because you're just going to sweat and you might as well get wet from the rain anyway. So, you know, it's one of those things. So obviously I said we don't have food, but we need a means to cook food. So when I'm hiking, generally, if I'm doing a hiking camp that's more than one night, if it's a singular night, I might take fresh food. So if it's like point A to a camp to point B, day 2 kind of thing, then I might take like some pasta and things like that and cook a fresh meal, which I could still do with this setup. If it's going to be more than that, I'm going to be using dehydrated meals like the, you know, there's a variety on the market. I'll throw some pictures on screen and links in the description. All you need for those is the ability to boil water and of course for tea and coffee. So what I've got here is I've got my OEX Takana solo stove setup. So it's basically the Jetboil but OEX's version. So it's a stacked stove. I've got a gas bottle in there. It's one of the small gas bottles. That'll do me about 5 days on the trail, roughly. The only thing that I'm actually missing today is my cup, which is just a folding silicone cup, which would also live in there. And to eat my food, I've got my Sea to Summit titanium spoon, and I've just got that kept here in the front of my Possibles kit. So again, I've got a couple of little pouches. Now these are the kind of things that people might say aren't necessary for hiking because they're added weight, but in my opinion, certainly the Possibles pouch is a definite. So again, if you want details of what's in this, I'll leave a link up here and in the description to my bushcraft backpack video. I go into full detail of this kit, but the main thing that's in there that will get used quite a lot is a head torch and some spare batteries. I carry a full Possibles pouch even when I'm hiking because I find it comes in handy. And then of course the other one is just my little notebook set, which if you want more details on, check out the video I did on my navigation kit, which this is part of. And that's also something that I don't have here today, is like my map setup and stuff. Basically it would be what's in that navigational video, and it would find a home somewhere, quite possibly just out and in my hand. Keeping clean on the trail is obviously really important as well. So what I've got is I've got a microfiber travel towel. Now one of the things that I took from the talk with Rainiers at the Bushcraft show was and I agree, these get quite minging and smelly when you use them on the trail. So what he suggested is just bandanas. And then I've got my new little toiletry and hygiene kit pouch that's in a Journeyman Handcrafts pouch, and all I've got in here is some toothpaste, toothbrush, hand sanitizer, little packets of wipes and tissues. And finally I have my full first aid kit here in this OEX dry bag. If you want information on this, check out the video. Again, I'll leave links to on my first aid kit. Again, I'm carrying my full first aid kit even when I'm hiking for the reasons that I share in that video. So that is the full kit. As I say, it's fairly minimal. So what I'm going to now do is repack this rucksack and talk you through how and why I pack it. Now I'll flash an image up, and this image really nicely depicts how you should really pack your rucksack, and I'll leave a link in the description to that video and the actual web page that's from. Not that video, that image, and you can go and check that out and use it as well. But we have to consider where the weight is in our rucksack, and generally we want the weight close to our back. But we also, and the way I tend to think about it more, is a first in, last out kind of thing, in that we pack it in reverse order. We pack it in reverse order of what we're going to need when we get to camp. So generally the last thing that we're going to need at camp is our sleeping bag, so that goes right at the bottom. But as I said earlier, we want to line our rucksack. So the first thing I do is I put in this big dry bag. Now I push it, now this is longer than the rucksack, so we can work with that. So I push it right to the bottom and I spread it out to fill the corners, and then I can just fold the top down around. Now I've got this secondary dry bag here from Caramore, and this holds my sleep kit in another dry bag to keep it dry. So this thing goes in as well. So the first thing in is going to be our sleeping bag. Now I use a compression sack with sleeping bags to get the size quite small. A lot of people just stuff it into a dry bag the way it is, or just shove it straight into their rucksack. I tend to find that I can't get that to work. Lots of people swear by it, but this is what I do. So I put it into a stuff sack, and it then goes into this smaller dry bag, and it sits on its side. So it sits this way at the bottom of the pack, generally pushed to one side. So there is then some space here. And what I put into that is my pillow and my small inflating roll mat. It'll be a little bit fiddly to do because the stuff doesn't necessarily fit perfectly. But that puts my roll mat, my sleeping mat, down here as well. And then I seal up. It's not in all the way, let's get that in. A little bit fiddly, as I say. So then I push the air out of this smaller dry bag and seal it up, because that's everything that goes into that dry bag. Now, when I packed the rucksack before I came out, I made a mistake and made it a little bit hard for myself, so I'm going to learn and I'm going to do it now. My tent poles are actually going to go outside the pack liner and just get shoved down the back corner somewhere there. So next up, we're going to go in with the tent, and the tent is going to go straight in and it's going to compress down, but it's going to sit right in the middle of the backpack up against my back, so that leaves us with this room around it. Then cook kit. So this is going down the side of the of the tent, just here. Down the other side goes my possibles pouch and my notebook set. Now in front goes my spare clothes, and just pull in the dry bag to get a little bit more room and compress this tent down a bit. Then jumper down one side, down jacket down the other side, and there's then a little bit of room here at the front where I would get my food in, and that's everything that goes inside the dry bag. So we can seal up the dry bag. Now I've kind of pushed it in a little bit too far, so it's not going to roll, but that's fine. Seal up the drawstring, put a little quick release half hitch in there, and then first aid kit just gets strapped into here using the compression strap. In the mesh internal lid pocket goes my towel and my wash kit, and also in there would go my wallet and my keys on a little key clip when I'm hiking, so I don't lose them. The lid can get pulled over and sealed up. In the top of the lid goes my weather kit right at the back, Just push this down a little bit. My waterproof jacket. And my water filter. And also in there, or in the hip belt pockets, would go snacks and lunch for the day. Down one side, I strap the roll mat, and this is my exception to the rule of having nothing strapped to the outside, but this is fine because it doesn't really matter if they get wet, the foam, these foam mats, and they're lightweight. But if I am strapping them anything to the outside of a pack, it's getting strapped on like this, where like down one side, and it's getting strapped on nice and tight so it doesn't go anywhere. We don't want stuff swinging about. And finally, down this side, we can just push stuff in a little bit. Goes my water bottle, and my kneeling pad would also go in there, but I'm going to continue using it. So that is everything packed into the rucksack there, ready to go, apart from food. So that is my kind of typical kit for hiking camps. Things change depending on what I'm doing, of course. If there is less water available, I'm going to find somewhere to put a secondary water bottle. If it's a scout camp, I'm generally not going to have necessarily going to have a stove, but I will have an eating kit, like mess kit. If it's a bushcraft trip, things change completely, so I won't touch on that in this video. But yeah, that's it. I'll leave some links in the description to some other videos on how other people pack their rucksacks, which I find very helpful and useful. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. So if you liked it, make sure to leave a like down below. Why not subscribe whilst you're down there if you're new? Leave a comment of what you want to see in the future. And until next time, bye for now.